what are you gonna do? You're gonna, or would you rather have crowds that are crazy and not get these fights? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to be happy you're getting these fights.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Boxing Scene's top stories only on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. I am George DeMatteis. Download the ProBox TV app where apps are available. And joining us here on Top Stories are our great world champions. We have Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi joining us here on Top Stories. Well, the boxing version, or something like close to it, of the Super Bowl is in the process of being finalized for February 22nd, 2025, as Boxing Scene understands it in Saudi Arabia. Now, top of the bill is that rematch between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bicol, but that undercard promises to be stacked. Of course, none of these fights have been confirmed yet, but we're looking at a situation. It could be IBF heavyweight champion Daniel Dubois going up against Joseph Parker, Jaron Ennis against Virgil Ortiz Jr. at 154, Carlos Adames defending his WBC middleweight belt against Hamza Shiraz, and another heavyweight match of Zhilei Zhang against Ajit Kabayel. That is going to be something special. And there's talk Shakur Stevenson might be fighting Floyd Schofield on the card as well. All right, Chris, how does this card, this bill fit from top to bottom? What is it compared to other, how does it compare to other Riyadh season events?
I mean, it's by far the best Riyadh card on paper that's been put together. I love this card top to bottom. You got the main event, which, listen, compared to the last fight, obviously what we saw in the first fight, it's not going to be a gangbusters type fight. But it's a very important fight for the weight class, for the divisions, for the pound-for-pound rankings. So the level of that main event is humongous. But then you got a couple of heavyweight bangers on there that can really steal the show in terms of being, action-packed. Joseph Parker definitely deserves his shot. He's getting it against streaking Daniel Dubois, which honestly I don't know if Dubois is the favorite in that fight. Joe Parker in recent form has looked tremendous. Very, very smart, very, very tricky, fantastic gas tank, and very, very just hard to deal with. And Dubois, who we've seen get frustrated in the past, could succumb. I wouldn't completely say that that's a Daniel Dubois win for sure. Then you got Zhilei Zhang, who has been one of the most exciting heavyweights in recent years. And fighting Ajit, I mean, that guy can fight. I don't know how much he has at the highest level. I've been impressed with him lately, but that's a massive test fighting a guy like Zhilei Zhang. And then when the Shiraz-Adames fight, we covered that on a past show. That's a phenomenal matchup, and I really tip my hat to Team Shiraz for jumping into such a tough fight so early, fighting one of the tougher champions of the weight class. So that's a big one. Virgil and Ennis, how do you not love that one? That's a bona fide show stealer right there. And then sprinkle in a little Shakur Stevenson and Schofield with a little bad blood. Why not? I'm from top to bottom, this card has everything that you can look for.
Yeah, Ennis and Virgil Ortiz Jr., that has main event written it all over it as well. That could be a main event also. Paulie, what do you make of this card from top to bottom with Riyadh season?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about could be main events. At certain points in time, over the course of the time we've been watching boxing, I think a lot of these fights, if not all of them, could have been a main event on another card. We've let's face it, we've seen big fight cards with worse main events than some of the fights on this card that aren't main events. Ennis and Virgil Ortiz was something that was being talked about back when Virgil was at welterweight. So this kind of comes full circle with Ennis now moving up to the 154-pound division and going up to fight Virgil at the next weight class up. At that time it didn't happen because it was Virgil that moved up to the weight class. So, that has barn burner written all over it, especially when you consider some of the defensive deficiencies we've talked about with Ennis having, And Virgil, let's face it, as offensively explosive as he's been, he also got dropped twice against Bohotchuk, so he's not exactly Pernell Whitaker himself. So, two very explosive offensive fighters who've shown a little bit of defensive liabilities. Yeah, like the champ was saying, I mean, that could be a main event in itself. That's an explosive fight. Ironically, I agree with the champ on the other one as well, where the main event is not your typical explosive fight. You've got some explosive fights on the card, but your main event is probably another real tough chess match. But again, let me reiterate this though. BIVOL, the fight was a chess match the first time around because BIVOL didn't break. If Beterbiev can make BIVOL break at any little bit, the way most of his opponents break, and BIVOL starts losing positioning because he can't have the mental concentration, that fight opens up as well. That fight didn't open up the first time because neither guy was breaking position. It was a very, very disciplined fight at the highest level. Let me tell you how difficult that is to do at such a high level when you got guys setting various traps, one guy who hits super, super hard, and all the other liabilities and nuances happening, and neither fighter breaks position. That was a very, very high IQ fight that I don't even know if words can really explain it. That I can't guarantee that that'll happen again, but I feel like it could because neither of these guys really was convinced that they couldn't have won that fight the first time around. You know, Beterbiev, for me, looked surprised that he won the fight. What I'm saying is neither guy was convinced that the result couldn't have been the other way around. You know, Beterbiev took the win, but when I got the decision, for me, he looked a little bit surprised that he got the decision. BIVOL didn't complain about not getting the decision, but it feels like he could have got the decision, and most people think he could have got that decision. So, you know, it could open up, but I think neither guy's going to break because neither guy's going to feel like they didn't do enough the first time around. I think you have a great fight there. Dubois is becoming one of the most exciting fighters in the weight class in the heavyweight division. And obviously, as the heavyweight division goes, boxing goes, as they say. So with a guy like Dubois there, that makes it fun. Parker is tricky. I'm wondering if Dubois' youthful exuberance, what we always talk about with that youth excitement, if it's going to overtake that craftiness of Parker. That's the only thing I wonder with Parker. Not that Parker's an old guy, because listen, compared to these other heavyweights, Parker's been around since he was so much younger that he's still not super old, but still in your early 30s, you start to lose that youthful exuberance and youth excitement, and you start to replace it with extra craftiness. You're still young enough to get away with it to a degree. You're not super old, but somebody who's too intense may overcome you. So I wonder there. That's sort of the wonder when it comes to breaking down that fight. Shakur and Schofield could happen. Let's see if that ends up becoming something. You know, obviously Shakur has to return at some point from that hand injury. We know it's not going to be Zepeda, but we sure you'd love to see Shakur against a guy like Schofield, who also, you know, has been clamoring and knocking on the door for his chance as well. Shiraz, you know, is a guy we've been super excited about. We've talked a lot about him as far as being the sort of an heir apparent in the middleweight division. You know, Champ, you give Shiraz credit for taking such a tough fight, but I give Adames credit as well. You know, Janibek wasn't exactly chomping at the bit to take on Shiraz when Shiraz tried to get the shot against him. Adames ends up taking this fight. You know, he ends up defending his title against the boogeyman coming up the ladder that nobody really wants to see. So this is a really, really good card top to bottom. This is one where you kind of kick back, order some food, and have some friends over because you don't want to miss any of these fights.
And now a big chance for Schofield with the Zepeda injury now. So he has a chance to step in there and make something happen at lightweight. Paulie, in a previous top stories, we talked about the sparse crowds in the arena there for some of these fights every odd season. Is there a concern that might happen again with this card as stacked as it is?
Yeah, I mean, culturally, I guess it's just not the place for that, but doesn't mean the fights aren't good. I mean, we've had this conversation yesterday, I think, as well, or in the last couple of days, where, you know, this whole thing about no fight atmosphere, nobody was complaining about it when Tyson was going to Tokyo in the 80s. They were just happy to see Mike Tyson fight, right? So nobody was complaining when Mike Tyson was exploding onto the scene in the late 80s. And I'm old enough to remember that, okay? I'm old enough to remember Tyson and Douglas. Tyson and Tubbs was around the time where I first started having memory of Tyson. It wasn't so much as Tyson and Douglas, even Tyson and Spinks later in the United States, but after Tubbs anyway. But Tyson and Tubbs and Tyson and Douglas were in Tokyo, and those crowds really were quiet, you know, and nobody was complaining back then. We've had the pandemic fights. Obviously, those were by force and not really something anybody wanted when they were closed door and with no crowd. But, you know, what are you going to do? Would you rather have crowds that are crazy and not get these fights? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to be happy you're getting these fights.
Yeah. So, Chris, what do you make of the possibility of the kind of the sparse crowds, considering that this is possibly, nothing has been confirmed yet, but this could be a super stacked and a fantastic card?
The possibility of it being sparse, it's going to be sparse. This is what these cards are. But it's fine. The card is so good. The fights are so good. We've had other cards there that did not have crazy crowd support, but it's okay. They're good fights. I personally don't care. I like seeing good fights. I want to see the best guys in the world fight each other. If it has to be in an area like that where there's no drinking, there's no booze, there's no real big crowd support, it's fine. When I fought Manny Pacquiao, we fought in Macau, the crowd sat on their hands. It's just a different culture. And I don't think we should knock any of these cards or any of these matchups because they don't have that crazy background atmosphere. Listen, does it affect the fight? Sure. Does it affect the moment and what it feels like to be there? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, this is a sport, guys, and these guys should be able to fight in a closet and still perform, because that's what we ask of our champions and our best fighters in the world. So, you know, is it going to be possibly going to be quiet? Yeah, it is going to be quiet. But guess what? The fights are good.
And like to remind you, nothing has been confirmed yet, but when it does confirm, it appears that all the negotiations are getting there.
It ain't going to be quiet when we're watching, though.
Oh, no, that's for sure.
Not on our couch right here, it won't be.
Man, this is going to be a stacked card, a great card being put together by Turki Al-Sheikh. And of course, as we get confirmation closer to that February 22nd date, we will give you all the information you need here on Top Stories. Quick reminder, scan the QR code, like, subscribe, and leave your comments on our YouTube channel. Download the ProBox TV app, where apps are available. December 7th, another edition of the Contender Series from Ireland. ProBox TV going back to Ireland should be a great main event with Dylan Moran taking on Tyrone McKenna. And you can see it on the app and on YouTube here on ProBox TV. I'm George D. Metellus, and this is Boxing Scene's Top Stories.
ProBox TV Contender Series. On December 7th, look for an all-out Irish war as Dylan the Real Deal Moran battles Tyrone the Mighty Celt McKenna at the top of a stacked ProBox-worthy card.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.